in, not in those words, but at this point in my career, I'm okay with being an individual contributor. And, a lot of times managing people is stressful. And, as we get on in our career, in our lives, we don't want that stress. And I prefer to work with a company whose cultural and values align with my values. I like the business product of the company. I remember a story when someone wanted to work for Topgolf. They're totally changing their careers, and they're in management, and their passion was golf, and their only goal in life was to work in a management position in Topgolf. So you can say whatever position it is, I just want to work for Topgolf, and they got the position because they were just so passionate about what the company does. But of course, you never want to say you want the job just for the benefits, even if you do. Even if right now, it's hard to get benefits in the marketplace, or it's really expensive to get benefits on your own. Don't admit that to anyone that you want the job just for the benefits. So there's also a perception that recruiters only want to work with people who are employed. So my comment to that is really just depends on the recruiter. I mean, obviously, we have some retained recruiter folks here. We have some contingent recruiter folks. But it really just depends on the recruiter, what their focus is, what their company's hiring needs are. Also, again, it really just depends on the length of time in transition. A lot of us are dealing with, parents who are sick, and so you have to take time off for several months to take care of, an ill family member. I think more and more during COVID, people are more understanding and they're more human, believe it or not, and they're more understanding of, people in transition. So I wouldn't really, worry about if you are looking for a position that, oh, I have to fill in my resume with something. Don't worry about that. But again, I stated this before, be prepared to answer. What skills have you learned? If you are taking care of a family member, maybe in your spare time, you can do some of these LinkedIn learning solutions, or you can take a webinar, you can take a class, or you can listen to podcasts and just get educated or learn a different skill. So just, keep that in mind. I'll pause here if anyone has any questions or comments.
Question. Your third bullet point as far as length of time and transition, why, most of us probably do, but why the need in this case to keep track of your interviews and reasons why you weren't selected, et cetera? Just for self-learning, or is there's some other reason you listed that?
Well, both for self-learning, and also some recruiters want to know how desirable you've been while you've been in transition. Have you been a couch potato? Or have you been constantly interviewing, 10 different interviews with one company and then you didn't get it? Well, why didn't you get it? Or if you've interviewed with 10 different companies and you've never gotten to a second interview. So it can help a recruiter figure out how to better represent the candidate. So is it something in your personality? If you've gone on 10 first interviews and you've not gotten a second interview, can your interviewing skills be enhanced?
Well, as somebody that went through some of that pain last summer, I was not always told why not for either the 10th or the 1st. And, felt we had a number of underlying thoughts of why it might have been, but the feedback is not sometimes not great. So is there a way to try to encourage more feedback?
Yes, I'm always 99% honest with a candidate, and I say 99 because I have to be cautious of laws. Maybe someone is just too senior in their career, but going back to what I was saying before as to reasons why someone aren't hired, I'm always honest with a candidate. If you had the same job 10 years ago, you obviously have the skills, but we chose someone who is moving up in their career who can learn and aspire to do this, as opposed to someone who's already been there, done that.
Terry, if I could add, so many of the clients that I work with, It's always the question of fit at the end of the day, and nobody really gets into the process if they're not qualified and if they're not interested in the job. So it comes down to fit, and fit is an intangible. And most of my clients couldn't quantify why the candidate wasn't a good fit. I'm left with having to tell the candidate that, well, they just didn't see you as good a fit with the culture and the organization as one of the other candidates. So the only thing that I could recommend in that respect is, since fit is an intangible, and it's usually about connecting with the hiring manager's management style or leadership style and the culture of the organization, I would just spend as much time trying to understand all the intangibles in those areas and try to quantify them, so that you might have a better sense for why it didn't go your way, for instance.
True.
So you heard Carrie and Jim, and they represent the buyer's agent. As a seller's agent, I would say to Doug's comment, you don't seem to get very much feedback. I encourage all of my clients to ask for feedback. Ask, and Carrie said 99% of the time she's honest. So I would say many times the information is there. The other thing I would say is, I don't mean any offense, but Jim and Carrie are a representative. They are not the buyer. So I would ask the buyer, the hiring person, the one who's making the decision, and not their agent. What feedback can you give me? There's a lot of sensitivities here sometimes, but as a candidate, you need to look at it from your point of view.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. It's all makes sense.
Richard, I hear what you're saying, but if my candidates are going around me to get to my client, and who has paid me to be the in-between, that might be the last time I ever work for that client. And I've had a number of situations where I've had to disqualify candidates who did that. So that, that's a high risk proposition, and, I would probably never work with that candidate again. So I would be very careful about giving that kind of, especially if you're dealing with a, retained search professional.
If it's retained search and it's clear you need to work through the recruiter, then I would say yes. It's not, of course, always that situation. I agree.
Another thing that a lot of people don't realize, or maybe they do, is that one of the number one reasons why I hear, and I've been doing this for 17 years, is that why people are not selected for a job is they are not quantifying and explaining what they do and what they did in a particular position. So I don't know if anyone has heard of the STAR, S-T-A-R, behavioral interview. So if you're not explaining in a concise but detailed way that what you did and what the results were and the actions that you took to affect those results, then the employer cannot see you in the role. Then it's superfluous. And a lot of people, I know this is minor, but a lot of people, when they're interviewing, say the word, "we did this, and this is what our results were," as opposed to, "this is what I did." If you're not, taking ownership while you're interviewing, the employer is just not really picturing you in the role, or they think that you're fibbing a little bit by saying, "we did this." And if you're not giving concrete examples, they think you're just kind of fluffing. So that is the number one reason that I see that people do not get positions. So hopefully that will help.
This is Ed. I just want to back that up. One thing that I've seen a lot of people who've been successful in getting jobs, especially recently, is to start to compile what they call STAR stories ahead of time, so that when those questions come up, they are prepared with those answers and not having to look at the ceiling. They don't. If you have to look at the ceiling, you're probably not prepared. So make sure you've got those stories ready to go.
100%, Ed. Retained versus contingent searches. We were just talking about this. So a lot of people don't know the difference, but you know, Richard and Jim are perfect examples. Retained search represents the buyer. Contingent search represents the seller. Recruiters charge an upfront fee on the retained search. On a contingent, recruiters get paid only if and when a candidate is hired. So it does change the dynamics a little bit when you're a job seeker as to know who, what the search is all about. Is, you know, and feel free to ask the recruiter, is this retained, is this contingent? Because sometimes the priority is a little bit more, a little different for, on a retained versus a contingent search. And that's my last point there. Exclusive search on a retained search versus a contingent search. There are many other recruiters competing to find the best candidate. So that was just a point of reference for everyone. You know, I'm sure a lot of people know the differences between retained and contingent. Just wanted to share that with you. How do I get to the hiring manager? LinkedIn is your best way, but obviously through networking with your connections. You know, who do you know in the desired company or industry that you're looking in? Definitely search the company to try to find the hiring manager. If you have a hiring manager's name, connect with them and then email them. Locate a recruiter within the company. You can usually, some the phrases are talent acquisition or recruiter or recruiting manager. You can do those keywords. Or ask your recruiter. Many recruiters have unlimited access to every single person on LinkedIn. I am one of those. And also, I don't know if anyone has heard of contactout.com. I did this several years ago. You can just literally go to contactout.com and it's a Chrome extension. And for the first 50 contact information is free, but only with a business email. And this is pretty much an overlay of LinkedIn. So when you're in LinkedIn and you click on someone's name, and if you're not connected with them, so obviously, you know, you're like a second or third connection, you don't have their email address, but there's a little what's it called, magnifying glass as the icon for contact out, and it's in the top right hand of your screen. If you literally are on the profile of a person and you click the contact out icon, it'll show you their email address. But it's only for the first 50 contacts. It's free. But then if you want to pay for it, it's expensive. It's about $2,000, but it's helpful if you're in a business, and you know, you can expense that. But also ask me. How do you get to the hiring manager? Ask me. I am one of those recruiters that have unlimited access. It's called LinkedIn Recruiter, where I can see every single person in the world on LinkedIn with some queries and so forth. So feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me, message me, and I will help you as much as I can to try to find a name in a company for you. So I'm here to help.